Welcome back again for another episode. My name is Darryl Budge. I'm the State Director for FamilyVoice in WA. I'm again talking to Andrea Tokaji, a human rights international legal academic, on various matters. And I'm just here talking today about resisting government and how do you do that in such a way that honours God and also leads the community at large to a better path.
Yeah, look, I think we can learn some great tips in history, biblical history as well as recent history. So we look at Daniel. How did he resist? Peacefully. He stood his ground. He, in the first instance suffered for it, but then he was glorified by God for it. Joseph was another great example. In the midst of those mistakes that he made in trying to stand up for his people, the Lord made a way where there seemed to be no way, and more often, more times than one, in his case. So in recent history, I want to take you to World War II. There's this story about a church. Sunday, they're singing, worshipping the Lord. They've got their books out and, they're all standing proper, all dressed up, very good citizens. Behind them is a railway track. Behind them is a train pulling up, dragging away men, women and children to these concentration camps. These men, women and children start screaming, "Help me, help me, help us." The people in the church start singing louder to drown out those voices. I now want to take you to communist Romania, where I was born, where we lived. A reformed minister started preaching against communism, saying that what the government is doing is wrong. We need to stand up for our rights, our freedoms. We need to stand against tyranny, and we need to protect our children and our future. Of course, by that stage, Romania was under communism for such a long time, about 46 years at that stage. But a minister who understood the word of God and understood that this was ungodly rule, and therefore it was our duty as Christians to stand against it and breathe a Christian voice in such an unchristian environment. At the risk of his life, his child's life, his wife's life, and his unborn child's life. They rallied support around him. He continued to preach. He continued to speak the truth and to inspire people to the point where the Gestapo were after him and people surrounded his house to protect him. They started rioting because they did not want this minister who brought them hope, who brought them truth, to be affected or to be harmed. This riot turned into, the riot moved into the major city where Ceausescu was getting up to do his speech. And the people were so inspired by his teachings and his stance as a leader in their community that they then started standing up. The people turned on Ceausescu and his wife. His own soldiers turned on Ceausescu and his wife. They had a 10-minute trial for him, found him in violation of crimes against humanity. They stood them up against a wall and shot them. That is how communism fell in Romania. Where did it start? It actually started in the hearts and minds of people. In the World War II example, we saw the hearts and minds decided, we're not standing up, we're too afraid, we don't want anything to do with it. In the example I gave you in Romania, people were inspired by hope, inspired by a message that stood for truth and righteousness and justice. And then they did likewise. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a choice. Will we stand with those suffering? Will we stand for truth, righteousness and justice? Or will we pretend there's not a problem, ignore it, let it get worse, because we're trying to preserve our own lives? Jesus said, if you lay down your life for me, you will gain it. But if you're trying to keep your life, you will actually lose it. So it's up to us.
Indeed. So there's a principle of self-sacrifice that is voluntary. Christ voluntarily gave his life. And though what is being preached today is kind of like, you must give up your particular rights to protect me, and it's not voluntary anymore. It's the other way around. So as Christians then, we go out and we share that message of hope, and you're saying it's going to light a small fire. So it's a personal delivery. You give it one to another, and also as a community, churches need to have that kind of love, care, compassion, and practical care.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if we look at church history, and we look at the history of revivals, how did they start? They started in the heart of man. One person, a group of people were praying. Their hearts were moved for a nation, for an issue, and they wouldn't stop. They were relentless. They were passionate. And it spread like wildfire. They inspired others. And it literally resulted in a revival. So in our society today, we desperately need a revival of hearts and minds because we've lost our way, we've compromised. In our humanistic, ways, we've consumed ourselves with self. There's no room left for God. The idol of today is self. And it's so sad. The only way of getting out of that is to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters.
And for such a time as this, then God appoints us to be like an Esther and say, I will willingly, voluntarily, at the threat of losing my life, appeal for the life of my people, the people that I love, my nation.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So thank you again for your time, Andrea. This has been a quick one. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you in another episode. Okay.